Hey.
Hello, everybody, all the members of Eastern Star around the globe. We are here for our next installment of one of our presentations today. Our next presenter that I am handling is going to be Jamie Barr. He is from the Grand Lodge of California, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about Own It. So, Jamie, it is all yours.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I hope everybody's doing well. This has been obviously a very educational experience. Hopefully, everybody's getting a lot out of it, and hopefully, I can contribute to that. My name is Jamie Barr. I work with a lot of different organizations across the country regarding membership development and program development. And so, uh, my interest today is to help to create a mindset that goes behind building an effective program. And specifically building a program that is designed to attract new membership. In other words, improve our membership program. Some of the things, if you sat in on Stacy's presentation a little earlier, many of the things I'm going to say are going to sound familiar to you. Hopefully they catch your ear in just a little bit different way, and maybe they can help to enhance the experience that you got from her presentation. Um, to begin, we're going to look at the traditional components of membership. And the three R's traditionally in this discussion are recruit, retain, and reactivate. If you'll notice, recruit is in red, so I can imagine that you think I'm going to talk about recruiting, which I am. I have an issue with this word, and you're going to figure it out here very shortly. Um, First of all, before we get started and get too far into this, I want to ask the question is, and obviously we're not going to get an answer, but I already know the answer to this. And the question is, can a change in perspective change how we view the world and our actions in it? Put another way, if we look at the things that we're doing and we continue to do those things, but we do them with a different attitude or a different perspective or a different way of looking at the situation, is it actually possible by even doing the same thing, by changing that attitude or perspective, we actually get a different outcome? And I believe the answer to that is yes. So consider this. Instead of thinking of our lagging membership issues as the cause of our problems, maybe we should be thinking of it as a symptom. Put another way, if you own a business and nobody's buying what you're selling, what's more likely to be the problem? The customer or the product? I have a very brief presentation here that I'm hoping is going to work. Now it looks like we're having a problem with it, but and see if it can. It gives you some perspective on finding your why. In other words, why are we doing what we do, and why should we continue to do it and do it as best we can?
I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it.
I'm going to let this video play because the information is important. I apologize for the video, though, for the fact you can't see the whole video. I'm not quite sure what's going on there.
You call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this: we make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. When we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. Sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right, because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal?
So what we need to do is we need to create a why. There's been a lot of discussion about purpose in the conversations today so far, and I have to completely agree with the notion that purpose, or our why, is incredibly important to our future success as organizations. When you ask yourself the question, why am I here? Why do I do what I do? Why is our organization in existence? You always have to start your answer with because. So as I move forward, just kind of think about what your because or what your why is, and why it's so important to do things the way I'm about to explain them. Changing perspective can get you what you want. I started off this presentation with the notion that if we change our perspective about some of the things that we do, maybe even by just doing them the way we've always done them, but do them with a different perspective, we actually get a different outcome. In this particular case, what I'm going to try and do is provide you some reasons why we want to get out of the recruitment business and we want to get into the attraction business. Attracting is a much more effective and a much more simple program to get your organization involved in. So what's the difference between recruiting and attracting? Recruiting requires convincing somebody of something that maybe they didn't know or didn't quite understand. And it's always active. In other words, you can't recruit an individual actively recruit and get engaged in a process of recruiting without actually being actively engaged. It doesn't happen just randomly. It doesn't happen passively. It's something that you have to constantly do. So if you're put in a position where you have to constantly go out and convince and talk to people about the idea that this is an organization you want to be a part of, it's incredibly inefficient, because you can only get to as many people as you can actually talk to. Attracting, on the other hand, has a completely different component to it. It's about awareness. In other words, people need to know who we are, what we do, how we do it. In other words, our why. And in that process, it can be both active and passive. If people understand what we do and they see us out in the system and doing what we do on a regular basis and can understand our why, or at the very least see the results of our why, then they may start asking their own questions about, well, why am I not involved with them? This seems like a kind of an organization I want to be a part of. So attracting is more effective than recruiting, less work, and I'm going to talk about that later in our presentation, more fun, less stressful, more inspiring for everyone involved in the program, builds pride in who you are and what we do, and is absolutely, without a doubt, easier on the members. With all of this in mind, which would you rather do, recruit or attract? I'm going to bet that the answer is recruit. So if you want to attract people to something, then you need to focus on the product. And I know that there was some conversation earlier about creating a high quality event, a high quality program. I can't agree with that more. The product that we represent and that we offer is the thing that we have to sell, the thing that we can present and talk to people about. I'm going to talk to you about what that is in just a minute. Usually this is a little more interactive a conversation. It's usually in a room of people, so it's usually a question, but that we get a response to. But how many of you would like to own a business? And very often hands go up and say, I'd love to own a business, or I currently own a business. Well, I'm going to offer you an opportunity. Congratulations. You now own a Masonic franchise, and we're going to call it Maison Mason. So it's, Masons love to eat. So we're going to call it we're going to open up our own restaurant, at least from a theoretical perspective. So to kind of put things in perspective, why do businesses form? Well, either they meet an unaddressed need, you believe that you can do it better than the products that are out there, or it's something that you're passionate about. In other words, it's about the product or the service. It's not about who you are and your why. Businesses form in part because of your why, but it's also because you recognize a need for the product or service. So if you build it, they will come. The question is, what is our product? What are we actually selling? Now, when I ask this question in an open room, the way I phrase the question is, what do we present ourselves as organizations to the public? And very often it's not the why, it's the what. If we go back to Simon Sinek's comments, what is Eastern Star? What is Masonry? What are DeMolay, Job's Daughters, and Rainbow? They're civic organizations that do all sorts of great things and create great youth and give us an outlet for doing great to our community. But that's the what. That's not the why. In addition to that, it's really hard for us to sell the concept of things like fraternalism and lifelong friendship, because those are all intangible things. So the truth of the matter is that the only thing we really have to sell or present to the public that is tangible and easy to get to is our program. In other words, your calendar, your organization's slate of activities. And I can't stress enough how important it is that, again, to point out where Stacy had made the comments, that a high quality program is incredibly important to the efficient and effective growth of your organization in the form of membership. The question is, what kind of product do you want to have? Very often in the marketplace, products are discerned by either quality or value. In other words, there's ways of creating something better than it is already, or that it represents a greater value than the certain other products that happen to be on the market. I'm going to point out that just because a bunch of products occupy an existing space in a field doesn't mean that another one can't come along. I would point out, if anybody's familiar with the name of a gentleman by the name of Mike Lindell. Now I got to say that there are probably billions of pillows out there in the world. And yet somehow or another, a decade and a half or so ago, a gentleman by the name of Mike Lindell decided that he was going to make a better pillow. Now, that's kind of an odd thing to decide, other than he had a purpose. He had his why. And as a result, he's created a multi-million-dollar business out of My Pillow. So just because there are other organizations, other youth programs, other activities in your community doing in many cases the same things that you're doing, doesn't mean that if we do it better, that we won't benefit from that. In fact, if we do it better, I guarantee you that we will benefit from it. The great thing about the Masonic organizations is that we have both quality and value embedded in the programming and the process that we have as organizations. And so we don't have to make the decision of, are we going to go with more quality or are we going to go with more value? Or we should be grateful with the fact that we actually have both. So first of all, you have to define and educate. First, yourself. What kind of business do you want? Well, as we've already indicated, we want to have a quality program that is also seen to be of value to those who participate. Secondly, we need to learn and know about our customers. We need to know who it is that we're addressing and where we're going with the information so that we can get them involved and help them and introduce them to who and what we are. So who are your customers? Well, obviously, I would say the members. They're the ones who've already bought your product and they want to continue to be active and engaged buyers. Our family members, we get a lot of support from the people who are involved in these organizations who may or may not actually be involved. Our husbands or our wives or our children may not necessarily be involved in the program, but we certainly don't want to disenfranchise those customers because we want to be able to continue to do the work we do. The parents, if we're talking about our youth orders, the parents are also our customers. If the parents aren't seeing value in the program that their children are involved in, they're probably not going to continue to encourage their children to attend. If you have a council, when we're dealing with a youth group, these are the adults who are spending their own personal free time and getting engaged in these programs and assisting our youth in becoming better and doing more. And then lastly, the general public. In other words, we're trying to engage the general public in our events and activities so they can theoretically consider being members of our programs. So how do we build a business that attracts customers to it and inspires them to buy? Well, people will buy what makes them feel good. For our purposes, buy means join, participate, support, and promote. In other words, we're not actually talking about buying an actual product. We're talking about buying it from a visceral, personal perspective. And when people buy, in our example here as our organization, when they're buying, what it means is that they're joining our organizations, they're participating and continuing to support our organizations, and they promote them excitedly because they're having such a good time. So we want to have, this is the kind of client or buyer we want to have in our system. So how do we usually learn about a new restaurant in our community? Well, first of all, you might see it. You just drive by and you recognize that the storefront has changed a little bit and it's a new place to go. You might read about it in the local paper. You might see an advertisement for it that they've put out. You might actually hear about it from a friend who's been and is talking about it at a cocktail party or some other activity or event. And lastly is someone actually takes you there. They recognize that there's something of interest that might be of interest to you. And they just say, hey, I want to take you someplace for dinner today, or I'll take you someplace for lunch. So if you take a look at that, all of this is a part of what's known as an awareness campaign. The restaurant itself has a sign on the front. It's going to have banners and such out in front of it. There's going to be all sorts of promotional activity, et cetera, that goes on. And as a result, you just by simply walking by or driving by, you see all of these things that are going on just as you walk by. Maybe as you walk in, you notice that they're all wearing black shirts that have a yellow stripe on it or something. In other words, it's a notable, recognizable company uniform, something that people can attribute to that restaurant as being, oh, well, they must work there. I wonder if I should go by and see it. In other words, anything at all that's visible with the restaurant's name on it. From an active perspective, very often new restaurants will go to city fairs or parades and that sort of thing and have booths and at these particular events and just hand out brochures and information, or maybe menus, that sort of thing. And so that's how they can get out and interact with the community without necessarily having them come by their actual restaurant. So if you think about building name recognition for our own organization instead of our restaurant, again, from a passive perspective, we are a publicly engaged organization that goes out and does things in the public. At least we should be. So there's nothing wrong with having, a matching shirt, uniforms, bright purple, bright yellow, whatever, that people can see as you're engaged in these activities. The idea here being that somebody may actually ask, oh, what's all these yellow shirts? What are you guys doing here? And you can give them an explanation very briefly of not only the cause and purpose that you're there for, but also who your organization is. You can put banners at your events. One of our DMLA chapters actually has a banner that it carries around everywhere it goes. It's one of those self-sustaining programs, so self-sustaining deals. And every time they go to an event, if they do a dodgeball event at a park, or if they're playing Frisbee somewhere, they break out that banner and throw it up. And people come by and ask them, oh, what's this DMLA thing? So they pronounce it wrong, but they get the question, which is way more important. And then anything that's visible with your organization's name on it. Again, the human beings by their very nature are somewhat inquisitive. So if they see the name of your organization sitting on a shirt or on a jacket or something of that nature, people will likely ask about it. This isn't necessarily going to get you new members, but what it does do is it starts to integrate the name of your organization into the community. What you want to be able to do is be able to say, I'm a member of, and have that organization name at least have some kind of a ring or tone to it when people hear it. I'm a member of Job's Daughters or Eastern Star, and have somebody say, I've heard of them before. What do those guys do? What are they involved in? You just need to build out some name recognition. It doesn't mean that it's going to immediately cause people to walk through the door and say, I want to join these organizations. What instead it's going to mean is that the next time they hear about it, or when somebody introduces them to the program by saying, I'm going to go to Eastern Star, I'm going to go to my DMLA event, it doesn't sound like some odd organization. At the very least, they've heard it in the back of their mind. From the active side of things, obviously information booths and fairs at fairs and parades, and then of course the regular traditional, donuts or hot dogs or whatever you might also have at such events. So that's a somewhat out in the neighborhood sort of an option. You might read about it. So from a passive perspective, kind of taking a cue from Stacy, we want to get things out into the public environment. So in that case, maybe there's from the passive side, if you have a restaurant, maybe a critic comes by to check it out for the first time and writes about it. Maybe there's a new business announcement in your local community paper that maybe it's not an ad, it's just something that happens in a lot of communities. You may in fact actually place an ad that is going to be a passive engagement with the community, letting them know that you're there. Actively, you can directly invite local reporters to your restaurant and have them come by and just check it out. Contact the local papers and communities and websites to let them know what's going on and let them sort of be the mouthpiece that goes along with your promotion. For our organizations, for the Masonic body, again, from an active perspective, you can place an ad or an announcement. There's absolutely nothing wrong with placing an ad in the local newspaper, et cetera, about your upcoming pancake breakfast, and even the purpose of that breakfast, to raise money for our local battered women's shelter, or whatever the story might be. Directly invite local reporters to your events. In other words, bring them in and let them see what we do. So much of what Masonry does seems to be behind this cloud and shroud of unknown information. Inviting your reporters into this environment is actually not a bad idea. Contacting your local community websites about upcoming events. I know it seems odd to say put an installation in the paper or on the websites, but oddly enough, when we've done that in the past, we've had old DMLAs, old Job's Daughters, former Rainbow Girls show up at the installation and say, I haven't been in here for 20 years, and I'm so glad to see it's still here. And you might even wind up from a youth program, you might actually wind up with a new advisor. From Eastern Star or Masonry, you may actually wind up with a new adult member. So don't discount what you think the public might think of something. What I would say is don't make the decisions for them. Offer them the opportunity to have the information available. So in the process of learning about a restaurant, again, the passive process is it might just come up in a conversation that somebody you're talking to has come up with. they're just having a talk. Oh yeah, I stopped by and went by this this new restaurant. It was pretty good. It could have been in passing, or it could have been with intent, out of enthusiasm for that particular location. They may even be saying, hey, you know what, Tom, I think you're going to do, I think this new Indian restaurant, I think it's a great place for you to go. Actively, which is the best thing as a business owner, they actually take you to the restaurant. They say, I'm going to take you to this restaurant. You're going to have a great time. You're going to enjoy it. For us, the friend introduction is pretty much the same. They could, you can mention it during a conversation, either direct and maybe even directly recommend it to the people that you're talking to. It could be in passing, you know, just mentioning, hey, I went to my Eastern Star pancake breakfast this last week and raised money for the local food bank. Or it could be with intent. In other words, you think this might be something that they're actually interested in, and bring out the point that maybe they'd be interested in being a part of it. And of course, the best part of it all is you can take someone to an upcoming event. The first one's free. This is an amazing concept that was not in any way, shape, or form invented by Costco. But I can tell you, if I was walking by this woman and she had these cheese-filled sausages sitting on sticks and handed me one, there's absolutely no way in the world I could possibly resist. In fact, I'd probably have to take another one. And the most important thing is, if I liked it, I probably walk straight down the aisle and I go buy it. That's exactly why Costco does it. The first one's free is an amazing concept for what we're trying to do, because it's actually a pretty simple thing for us to do. But the first thing that has to happen is there actually has to be an event to invite people to. So back to the concept of having a well-planned, well-organized, well-structured, well-promoted, well-executed event, you actually have to have an event to invite them to first. And this is so incredibly important. But it's so much easier to invite somebody to an event than it is to explain what Eastern Star is or what Job's Daughters Malayan Rainbow are. There's no need to explain these things. Just invite them to an event. The passive aspect of this, it's such a great and amazing thing about this, is that once they're there, all you have to do is invite them to the event and let them experience the high quality event, meet the people that are involved in the program. In other words, let them experience your product. The first one's free. This makes it so simple and so easy. I think so often we try to make the world so complicated by trying to figure out elevator speeches for how we explain the programs that we're involved in, and how can I effectively and efficiently communicate the information. I think that's it's certainly a skill that's worth having, but the truth of the matter is that it takes a lot of work to get that stuff right. And you have to be able to say in an elevator speech, for instance, the exact words you use may not be the exact words the person that you're talking to needs to hear in order to be excited about what you're talking about. And so you're taking a chance that what you say may or may not be right to entice them to do something, take more action, may even put them off. You really don't know. But if you just take them to an event, a well-planned, well-executed, high-quality event, let them decide for themselves if this is something that they want to be a part of. In other words, don't sell this product. Don't sell the experience that you're about to engage them in. Instead, give them the opportunity to buy. And there's a big difference in there. When we talk about our experiences in selling events and experiences, when we say, I got sold something, that usually has a negative connotation. You know, I got sold a bill of goods. I got sold into this deal. It usually doesn't have a very positive outcome or very positive connotation in how we deal with it. But if we're given the opportunity to buy something, that is in and of itself usually perceived to be a very positive thing. I got the chance to buy into, I got the chance to go to, I got the chance to be a part of. So it's a buying opportunity. You don't need to sell the idea. All you need to do is invite them to the event and then give them the opportunity to buy it. It doesn't mean that everybody who walks through the door is going to buy what you have to sell. But if you give everybody the opportunity to buy, then the chances of you having some customers say, yes, this is where I want to go, are going to be very much higher than if you just try and explain the quality of your program and your product and your event. Just let them experience it. Let it be something positive for them. In our case, on the first one's free, bring them to open houses. Actually have definitive prospect events that are well thought out, well planned, well managed, and well executed. Give them a chance to feel what it's like to be a part of things. And then, of course, on your regular events that are open to the public, the fundraisers, the community services, and of course, any of the fun activities that your organization might be engaged in. So how would you like people to learn about your business? What's the most effective way? Do you want them to see it? You want them to read about it? Or do you want them to be introduced to it? If I'm a business owner, I want other people, I want other excited people to introduce their friends to my business. Because that means not only do I have a customer that likes what I have to do, potentially a repeat customer, but now I don't have to work so hard to get the word out. I just have to make sure that my product continues to be of a high quality. And then your excited customers are going to be the ones that are going to go out and talk about how great this organization is and why you need to be a part of it. So using our example from the Masonic body organizations, we want people to talk enthusiastically about what it means to be a part of this Masonic body, whatever the Masonic order is. As a business, what are we always trying to create? We're always trying to create a business worth talking about so that we don't have to promote it ourselves. We want our customers, we want our members, we want our families, we want the other participants in the organization to be so excited about it that they're talking about it to their friends and they're going to become repeat customers. In other words, they're going to continue to show up. They're going to continue to be a part of things. They're going to continue to support the activities of our organization. The product creates the excitement. We have to create an excellent product, in this case, a calendar. Secondly, we have to provide value. For the most successful business, the product is more than just the item purchased. It's also the customer experience. In other words, the environment that we're in. Is it a good environment? Is it friendly? Is it happy? Do we actually encourage people to come by that we don't know? These are all things that are going to be very important as you continue to develop the mindset that goes into developing a successful organization. So how do you create loyal, vocal, and excited customers? First of all, you have to set or understand the expectations of your customers and then meet or exceed those expectations. Understanding is important because you have to understand the people you're talking to, but let's talk about setting your expectations and setting the expectations of others. Sometimes we have a tendency to overpromise. We talk about all the amazing and great things that we can do as an organization, that when we look at what the organizations on a national or international level are doing, it's these amazing stories, and we have a tendency to talk about those things. But at our local operation, we're not necessarily doing all of those amazingly great things. Very often they're much smaller, much more localized, much more specialized activities on a local level. So if you start talking about, we raise millions of dollars to support the Shriners hospitals, and yet your local chapter organization may support those things, but only raises raises thousands of dollars. Granted, you didn't lie to anybody, but you set an expectation for the organization that is in no way, shape, or form ever going to be able to be met. So what I would say is that you don't want to overpromise in an effort to bring people in. Instead, what you want to do is you want to be honest, and you want to be specific about what your group does, because they're not, as a general rule, people are not going to get engaged at the international levels, certainly not right away. What they're going to do is they're going to get involved in the local levels. And so you need to set the expectation of what they can expect when they walk in the door of your organization and when they get involved in that organization. If you set an expectation too high and your organization is incapable of meeting it, you're going to have a hard time retaining those people. The best example I can give you is that everybody, I'm sure, has bought a product based on just an advertisement, not seeing it in their hand or in a store, but literally just on an advertisement. And I'm sure we've all bought a product that in that process has disappointed us. The question I always ask is, I bought a product based on a recommendation or some kind of enticement. I used the product and I didn't like it, or I got the product and I didn't like it. The next question is, did you buy it again? And the answer to that question inevitably is no, because it didn't present value. And I was disappointed in the outcome. I got oversold that product. And so what we try to avoid is we want to avoid setting expectations to a level that are unachievable or that we're not currently meeting. If we can keep our minds focused on basically delivering what we promise, we have a tendency to have a higher degree of success, higher levels of retention, and our success continues to grow. And that means that we can then move on to bigger and better things. So in other words, the product is the program with the experience. In other words, it's not just the event itself, but also all the things that surround it, all the people and all the activities, all the organization, all the skill that went into putting things and putting them together right. We have to have a high quality program that represents an excellent experience for anybody who's involved in it. Now, the great thing about our product in particular is we actually have a very simple program. The program is the product. We have to build out calendars throughout, for the various terms of our leadership. And the program is actually the infrastructure for success. If you're able to create and distribute a pre-planned, reliable, and you'll notice reliable is underlined, available and full-term calendar, and make it available on a broad basis and make it exciting, make it engaging, that you've engaged the people within your organization and they've told you the things that they want to do, you have a higher probability of having a successful program for an extended period of time. It's perpetual, it's constant. You'll notice here the second most powerful tool you will have is this calendar. I'll let you know what the most powerful tool is here in just a second. So let's just presume that we're going to have a grand opening of Maison Mason. And we're going to start telling everybody that we're going to be opening and everything's going to be going gangbusters on January 1st of next year. So the first question I would ask you is, would you probably post your hours for that opening and for all the days that your business is open? Of course you would. Otherwise, how would anybody know when to go to your store? Why would they know when to go to your restaurant? So here's the problem, is that if our calendar is not reliable, it's kind of like saying, well, we're open, but I can't promise you we're always going to be open to meet all of your restaurant needs. In other words, reliability is a sign of quality. Now, if you're in a position where you're maybe not as consistent in the execution of your events, if you periodically cancel events, this is probably the sign that would wind up on your restaurant. Sorry, we're unintentionally closed due to poor planning. Now, the irony of it all is that we think that that's not such a big deal because somehow or another people are going to still come back once we are having the next event. In other words, the bottom is kind of the presumed outline of it all. We can't be sure when we'll be open again, but we will. And when we do, believe me, it will be great. So by all means, please keep making plans to have your important family events here. Oh, by the way, we love our customers. In essence, that's the message that winds up getting sent when we cancel events, when we make our calendar unreliable. And so having high quality, well-planned, well-executed events is imperative, not only for your current membership, but also for the recruiting or growth, actually the attracting process that you're going to want to go through to keep your organization consistent and moving forward. So back to our analogy of your restaurant, would you have a menu? And the answer is, of course you would. How would they know what to order? So let's just say you went to the restaurant the first time, you really enjoyed it, you liked the staff, you liked the ambiance, you liked the food was amazing, everything was there. Your first experience there was absolutely fantastic. And so you decide to go back a second time and you decide to take a couple of friends with you. And all you've done all along from the time you went to that restaurant is talk to all your friends about how amazing the Grandmaster's special was. And the minute you walk in the door, you find out that the Grandmaster special is not available. Now, you're going to be pretty disappointed. Now, there's a couple of concepts that I think are worth examining here. First of all is that if you don't have the Grandmaster special at that time, it's probably pretty important as a restaurant owner to be able to say, you know what, the Grandmaster special, unfortunately, our beef didn't get here on time. I apologize for that. However, a lot of people who liked the Grandmaster special really liked our Supreme Guardian's Delight, and it was really very similar in a lot of ways. So might I recommend that you do that? In other words, have an alternative. If we're talking about events and activities, and maybe weather is an issue that could impact the availability of an event, have a backup. I know Stacy talked about that, and I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it's exactly what should be done, is have something that you can have on offer that if by chance something should go horribly, horribly wrong, you still have some place to take somebody. In addition to that, let's say you decided that you were going to go back again. And this time the Grandmaster special wasn't available again, but it's still sitting on the menu. How excited are you going to be eventually about going back to that restaurant if, even though it's still on the menu, when you go there, it's kind of hit and miss as to whether or not you're actually going to be able to get the meal you were hoping to get when you walk through the door. In other words, you start depressing people in their enthusiasm for your organization and what it has to offer. And believe me, it doesn't take much to disappoint people and have them decide, well, you know what, hey, that place was great, but they're incredibly unreliable. They're not always open when they say they're going to be open. They don't always have the food that they say they're going to have. And so, rather than be disappointed, I'm just not going to go there anymore. But more importantly, remember, with the biggest value of having excited customers is that they talk about your program to your friends or to their friends. How excited are you going to be about recommending, in this case, this restaurant, if you can't comfortably recommend it and say, yeah, and the food is always great and it's always open and it's always going to have the food they're looking for? They may show up periodically and just see if it works out, but they are definitely never going to invite a friend to go with them. And that's a lost opportunity. In other words, we need to represent consistency, professionalism, and quality from top to bottom all the time. It cannot be the case that we look like we're a schlock organization. For goodness sake, Masonry's been around for 300 years. We should be able to get this stuff right. The bottom line is this, is that the more professional, the more high quality, the greater the benefit to the people who show up, the more value they see in our program. And the more value they see, the more likely they are to continue to not only support it as members and attend as members, but also to encourage their friends to be a part of it as well. Remember, people will buy what makes them feel good. And again, for our purposes, buy means participate, join, support, and promote. These are all the components that are associated with attracting. I don't have to go out and recruit people under these conditions. If I'm able to put this kind of a program together where I have excited customers, then that's what we're really aiming for. A business experience is not just one person or product. You also need a loyal, excited, and effective team. So just to go back to who our customer is, it's the members, the family members, the parents, council members, and the general public from a potential perspective. The question then becomes, who is on your team? Well, oddly enough, it's the same group of people. The members, the family members, the parents, the council members. I usually get a little bit of pushback on the general public part, but let me explain to you where that came from. I work with a DMLA chapter here locally, and we were just trying to get off the ground, just trying to get our feet under us and get something started. The chapter had been closed for a couple of decades. And so we just started doing a lot of the things that I'm talking about. We started going to activities and events and wearing some of the same shirts and doing all the things that I've just talked about. And about 6 or 7 months into the program, we started to kind of get our feet under us. We built up some relationships with the schools. We built some relationships with some of the churches, the Boys and Girls Clubs. And we're just slowly kind of getting our name out there and people recognizing who we were. One time I got a phone call from somebody saying, I understand that you have an organization for young men. I'm interested in learning more. I've got a 12-year-old son. I said, that's fantastic. How did you happen to learn about us? And the woman said, well, my friend, and she gave the name, said that I should check you guys out. Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't know this person. I didn't recognize the name. I didn't have her on any of our lists. I didn't know any at all who this person was. I said, well, I got to be honest with you. That's a name I don't recognize. What's your relationship? She goes, well, actually, she has a daughter. And so I guess your program isn't really built for girls, but she had seen you guys at so many different events and so many activities and learned more about you guys just by reading stuff that you've given her and that sort of thing, that she thought that that my son might benefit from being a part of your organization. Now that's somebody who's never bought our product, and yet she talked in a positive way enough to have somebody who's never been a part of our business and our organization is now recommending us to their friends. So believe it or not, over time, name recognition in the community, the general public gets to know who you are, and they will start understanding what your purpose and why you're there. And as a result, you will ultimately be able to start bringing people in who have no relationship to you whatsoever, but are interested in what you have to say and do. How do you build a loyal, effective, and excited team? First of all, you have to set high standards. You need to stop, for the lack of a better term, giving yourself a break. You need to say that I'm focused and dedicated to this process, and I think it's important that I do whatever it is I've been asked to do. It's important that I do it and do it well. And you use it as your yardstick for everything that you do. The benefit of doing this is that you build pride amongst the people involved in your organization. Your team starts to become proud of what it is they're doing, and they want to continue to do good work, and they want to continue to put out a good product. And it also creates value. The higher the quality of the effort put in by the membership of your team creates even more and more value. Second of all, you want to encourage an input and civil discourse. In other words, it's a collaborative effort. It's not just one person. It's not just one set of ideas. You definitely need to have a team coming up with concepts, ideas, purpose, process. Acknowledge and recognize each other's abilities and trust and empower others to do so, to do their jobs. In other words, don't micromanage. Say, you've got this job, you do it. Now, the thing is that I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation that when you tell somebody to do something, they may not know all the things that need to be done, and they're going to make mistakes. And these are learning opportunities for everybody that gets involved in these programs. Let's face it, as longtime members of these organizations, we might be very, very familiar with how to run a breakfast or how to do other activities. But for somebody who maybe has come in for the first time and only been around for a short time and maybe hasn't done these sorts of things before, we can mentor them to some degree, but we also need to give them the opportunity to do things on their own, because truth be told is they may actually find a better way to do it than we've been doing it. So you need to give them the power and the opportunity to do things in their own way, and then offer guidance and suggestions. And in the end, if something goes wrong, let's face it, it's not the end of the world. You don't want to start pointing fingers and blaming people for these things. What you do instead is you solve the problem at hand at the exact moment, with everybody all hands on deck trying to make the problem better. And then afterwards, you learn from that experience. You debrief in the event and you say, look, we're going to do this and we're going to do it well, and we're going to do it better next time. Measure your success measure the success in your Masonic business. The question is what are our profits? We're not taking money in. Our profits are these things: active and happy members, active and happy adults if you're working with the youth orders. We get new members coming in, people who hear about what you're doing and how great it's going, and they're coming into your organization. You get to be proud of the program you've put together. It gives you a sense of pride that the program you're working in is efficient and effective and valuable to the people who are engaged in it. And most importantly, let's face it, we very often take these programs so seriously, it can actually cause us some distress. I can tell you that if you handle your program this way, you'll actually reduce the amount of stress, and you actually increase the amount of joy that you get by your participation in it. If we take a look at the franchise model, in the case of the Masonic bodies, the international, state, and jurisdiction programs are the equivalent of corporate. And our local chapters and Bethels and assemblies and lodges are all the retail, the local operations. So if we take a look at it from the corporate responsibilities, they're the big picture people. They're the ones who are kind of laying out the bigger picture for the organization. They're there to govern and manage the operations on the biggest scales. They're the ones who provide a mission and a purpose for the organization as a body. They recognize and represent oversight in the program and how to get things better and how to do things better and how things are going to be improved over time. At times, unfortunately, there can be disciplinary issues that need to be attended to, but that's the job of the corporate level. And then, of course, training and education, getting the information you need so that on the local level, you're way more effective and efficient at getting the job done. But what does the local level program do? First of all, it's boots on the ground. This is the local operation when it's literally moving through the process of being a chapter or a Bethel, an assembly, a lodge. They have local knowledge. They know what their community is like, and they know what seems to be effective and met with enthusiasm in their local community. The local communities across the country are not the same. So having local knowledge can certainly make a big difference. A good example I can give you in that is that the filet of fish at McDonald's was not actually an original item on the menu, but in essence, what happened was there was a gentleman who lived in a community that was almost exclusively Catholic, and so he saw his sales go down dramatically on Fridays, and so he suggested to Ray Kroc that they open up a new product called the filet of fish. And Ray Kroc had another idea. He wanted to actually have a vegetarian version of a burger. And so they made a deal that whoever sold the most product on one Friday, their product would be the one that would go into the store. Well, to say the least, the filet of fish outsold the Ray Kroc version about 100 to 1. So that local retail member, that person of that McDonald's, that franchisee, knew his neighborhood better than Ray Kroc did. And as a result, the filet of fish was born. And I can tell you personally, I'm grateful for that. But you interact with the community at your local level. They know their customers. They know who is involved in their community and what they're doing and what they're involved in. They directly serve the customer. In other words, corporate is not out there making hamburgers or creating relationships with contractors and that sort of thing. The local businesses are the ones that are doing that. As a local retailer, you need to be flexible and innovative, like the gentleman who made the filet of fish. Flexible and innovative, being flexible and innovative made a difference and made a profit for him in a time when it might not have been otherwise available. Most importantly, if we get to talk about profit, the local profit centers are your local operations. In other words, remember what our profit is: active and happy members, active and happy adults, new members coming in, pride in your program, low stress. All of that is generated at the local operation. It's not done at Grand Chapter. It's not done at Grand Lodge. It's not done at International and Supreme for the youth programs. All of these things, the active and happy members and happy adults, et cetera, are all created. The profit that is represented by those things is all created at the local level. So what you need to do is start thinking like an owner. Be attentive to your customer and keep in mind who your customer is: your members, your parents, your family members, et cetera. Keep in mind who those customers are and be attentive to their wants and needs. Build your team and give them the power and ability to do the things that need to be done, so it doesn't just fall to one person. You need to have a team to build a successful program. Be willing to try and learn new skills and try new ideas. The example that I've given in the past, and it's because it's one of my favorite stories, I'll use it again here, and I apologize if there's people in the room that have heard this before, but when I was in DMLA, which is what most DMLAs hate to hear, by the way, but when I was in DMLA, my DMLA chapter decided that they wanted to have an event that nobody had ever done or had before. And what they came up with was they decided to have a pay-to-play food fight. So the three of us got together, we came up with all the plans, and we'd gone through all these discussions with our advisors in the past, so we knew what they were going to ask. We thought of everything. We thought about head and eye protection. We thought about what kind of food we were going to throw. We thought about how we were going to protect the lodge from all the crazy food we were going to throw. We were going to have it in a special section of the parking lot that was kind of away from everybody. And then we had our own way of getting it all cleaned up and how we were going to make all that happen. And so we brought that to our advisory council, absolutely fully expecting that we were going to get shot down. And to the credit of our advisory council, they asked a few more questions. And at the end of the day, they looked at our report and looked at our plan, and they said, you know what, go ahead. And so our chapter had the very first pay-to-play food fight that we'd ever heard of. And the cool thing about it was only maybe about 30 or 40 people actually participated. And all of us wound up with little welts and everything all over our bodies. But the funny thing about it was well over 100 people showed up just to watch. And that was the coolest thing about it, was we had built these holes in these giant pieces of plywood so people could watch safely. And we could hear them laughing and yelling and screaming. And we were just having a great time inside the arena. But so many people came, and people were talking about that event for months afterwards. So to the credit of my advisory council, as silly as the idea was, they actually allowed us to do this. And so they opened their minds and their eyes to the idea that new ideas can actually be incredibly helpful. Follow your instincts. Like I said, the gentleman with the filet of fish, he had an idea and it paid off. Be flexible. Understand that things will change periodically and that you need to re-examine circumstances and be flexible in your thinking so you can continue to innovate and grow and move forward. Be honest with yourself and others. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. That's the fastest way to lose your customers. Always deliver what you promise. In other words, the idea here being that if I give you exactly what I say I'm going to do, you can't be disappointed because you already had an expectation. Seek advice and gain knowledge. We're not the only ones in this world who know what we're doing. Let's face it, sometimes we don't know what we're doing. But the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of people out there who do know what they're doing and can be good resources for us when we can gain our own knowledge by trying and doing new things, but also we can learn by the efforts of others. Retain your core values as an organization. I think that's incredibly important, but also embrace innovation in how you do things and the things that you do in the wake of those core values, the purposes and reasons why we do it. Have both a short and a long-term memory. I know it's kind of hard to discern between them, but I'm going to give you the reasons why. Have a short-term memory about your failures. In other words, don't let your failures make you start believing that somehow or another, the next time we want to try something new, we shouldn't, because the last time we tried something new, it didn't work. Have a short-term memory about those failures, but also have a long-term memory about how those failures could have been improved upon. And also remember for the long term, the successes that you've had, because those two things are going to be the things that move you forward, that allow you to continue to be creative, allow you to continue to move forward, continue to serve your customer, continue to make your theoretical profits by making people happy and doing the right thing. And last but not least, be fearless and be focused. Don't be afraid of failure. The only way that we can make these things better, the only way we can start to become more engaged and more valuable to our communities is to be fearless in our efforts. We have our core values. We know what we stand for. So be fearless in the support of those core values and move out into the community and let people know who we are and what we do, and stay focused. Don't lose sight of the bigger prize, which is our goals and our purposes as organizations. We started off this presentation by talking about the value of attracting, being more effective, less work, more fun, less stressful, more inspiring for everyone, builds pride and enthusiasm amongst the members, and it's easier on the members. Hopefully this presentation up to this point has been able to show you that this is in fact the case. The thing that I often get some pushback on, however, is the notion of less work. This is the important thing I think you need to take away from this, is that we all have a responsibility of building a calendar anyway for our term. So it's a job you're already doing. All I'm trying to point out is that it needs to be done with purpose. It needs to be done with the objective. It needs to be done with fervor and intent that it be done and be done well. Granted, that may take more work than maybe what you've been exhibiting in the past, but it's actually what you should have been doing and should be doing anyway. So I'm really not asking you to do anything more than what you should be doing anyway. The point being is that less work means that I'm not having to spend time going out and recruiting. All I got to do is run a good program. I don't have to go out and find ways to make my members enthusiastic. I just have to run a good program. I don't have to figure out how to get information out into the world because I just have to run my program. If all you're doing is focusing on the quality of the program you're running, everything else has a tendency to either fall into place or fall to the wayside because it's not important. If all you did is consistently focus on the high quality and great execution of your program, it would be the last thing you'd have to worry about ever again. Everything else literally falls into place. So own it like a business. Use your why with focus on the customer to motivate your organization to execute a top-notch program. In other words, the product, the calendar. The program provides the infrastructure. We don't have to do anything different. We already know what to do. If you build it well and execute with excellence, they will come. People will continue to recognize the value in what you're providing, and they will do it themselves, and they will also start talking to others. We get people at our lodge, because I think we run a very good program. We get people at our lodge that say, you know, I went to such and such other lodge, and they had a really good time, but I've come here, and there's just something about this lodge. There's something about this program that speaks to me. Now, it's not going to happen to everybody who walks through the door, but we make a definitive effort to make sure that all the things that I've just talked about are things that are being executed at our lodge. And it just kind of comes across that we've got things moving well and well organized. It doesn't mean the other lodges aren't good. Of course they're good. They're great. They're our brothers and we love them dearly. But we do frequently get people coming in our building and saying, well, I went and visited XYZ Lodge and they were okay, but you know, there's something about this place that I like a little better. And in the end, when you build a high quality program, they will tell their friends about it and they will bring them to your events and activities. You'll succeed in building an organization that attracts people to it of all ages. You're going to eliminate their need for recruiting. You literally want to create a program that you can be proud of, that you will talk about, and that will start attracting people. because everyone likes to buy things that make them feel good. Be honest with yourself, be fearless, be focused, and take action. Don't sit back and wait for things to happen. You actually have to start doing something. So hopefully now you have a better understanding of why attracting has a much higher appeal to me than recruiting. It's a more efficient way of using our time. It gets us the program that we want. It gets us the program we can be proud of and be excited about. And it actually makes our jobs easier by just simply create a program that is designed to attract people to it. So I'm going to close out this presentation with a couple of whys. We started off with Simon Sinek and his concept of why. Very often when we talk about our Masonic bodies, we talk about, I'll use a youth group as an example. DMLA is an organization for young men between the ages of 12 and 20 years old, helps them build character, learn leadership skills, and make friends for life. That's the what in Simon Sinek's structure. That's not the why, that's the what. And it's very, very difficult, again, to explain and get the concept across of things like brotherhood and fraternalism and friendship, because everybody has sort of their own definition of those things. So instead of starting with the what, we should be starting with our why. And so I have two of them here. I have one for the Masonic adult groups. The why is because my community should be a place where all good people feel welcome and those in need are served with dignity and compassion. My neighborhood should be a standard for others to imitate. That's a why. That's a why I'm here. That's why our organizations exist. How do we do it? The practical applications of the principles of our organization is the outward-facing, engaged side of my relationship with the organization. In other words, it's the stuff we do. Taking action based on these principles makes our neighborhood a better place for everyone and gives me the opportunity to serve others. That's how we do what we say we're going to do. The what is that this organization is where people get to serve their community, have fun doing it, and make friends for life. That's a very different description, a very different way of perceiving what our Masonic adult organizations do. I think it's right in line with how we think about our organizations. I'm not giving you an idea that doesn't already pervade itself in your own thoughts already. What I'm saying instead is that this is the way you can now motivate yourself to doing the things that you need to do. We talked a lot about purpose in these presentations today. This is a purpose, the why. If we take a look at our Masonic youth orders, our why is because I want the youth of my community to have the skills and experiences that will have a lasting positive impact on them and the world for the rest of their lives. That's an amazingly good why. How? Under the caring mentorship of our adults, our Masonic youth orders puts the youth of our communities in charge of their own organization, where they can learn these skills and have these experiences in a friendly, safe, and fun-loving environment of their own making. That's how we get to that why. And what are we? What are our Masonic youth orders? Masonic youth orders is where you can find the leaders of tomorrow having fun and making lifelong friends today. So if we change our perspective, if we change how we see the world, even in the things that we're doing, that we're already doing, I believe that you can actually get a different outcome. Remember, my perspective in all this is that our lagging membership is not the cause of our problem. I believe it's a symptom, and the symptom of maybe not doing things as well as we could or should, and as a result, we're not getting the results we think we should be getting. That's the end of my presentation. Here's my contact information if anybody has any further questions, and of course, I'm certainly happy to open up the floor to any questions that people may have now.
Thank you, Jamie. I actually posted on the live chat to say that, asking if there are any questions. You are still talking there, and you're almost done. But I do not see any coming up. There was one question earlier as to what was the link for that video that you included. If you could send it to me, I can insert it into the video and I can make it work. So if you send me that link, I can make it work into this video.
Okay, I can do that. Then
I'll get rid of this last little bit of us talking too. So.
Yeah, the speaker, his name is Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K.
Okay.
And he actually has quite a bit of material on YouTube. He's a well-recognized speaker, author, etc. And he's very focused on motivations, not motivating, but motivations, why people do what they do and how we can be better at it. And so I would strongly recommend that anybody go onto YouTube and find his material. The presentations are much longer, but we take out bits and pieces for this presentation. So, but yeah, I'd be happy to pass that along.
And I have another question from Cynthia James. She's
Okay.
asking, any suggestions for aging members of chapters to attract members where there are no youth organizations? Question mark.
I want to make sure I understand the question. Is she talking about the aging members of the youth orders? Can I presume that's what she means?
You can presume what you want. I'm waiting for her to hear you and then respond. It may take a few
Okay.
seconds, but
Sorry.
that's fine. Yeah, I don't see anything. She hasn't come up to yet.
Well, so I'll answer both sides of that question. So again, there is no quick fix in all of this, and what I mean by that is that it doesn't mean that it can't happen quickly. What it means is that we shouldn't just presume that it'll happen quickly. This is an effort that takes a lot. It's going to take some time. You can't just build an excellent organization overnight. So, but you can certainly start working on it tonight. The idea that that somebody may or may not be involved with your organization anymore, either because they're older, and I'll use the youth orders in this particular instance. Quite frankly, it may not be possible to bring them back because they very often they get caught up in things like school and relationships, et cetera. But I think rather than try and necessarily focus your energies on them, which is nice to have the older members there because they're the ones with the experience, and they're kind of like older brothers and sisters. I think what you do instead is you focus on creating the quality in your program from this moment forward, in whatever capacity you possibly can. We didn't have any members in our DMLA chapter initially, and we just kept trying to make programs work and high quality activities and be engaged with the schools and various churches, et cetera. And it just over time, it just kind of started attracting people. They kept seeing us around, and they eventually started asking questions. And so we started getting people saying, well, this sounds interesting. How do I get involved? When you start talking about the adults, if we're talking about getting our older adults involved, I'm not so sure that there's a real answer there from the standpoint of, if they're not available if they can't be transported or whatever, then it's obviously a hard thing for them to be involved with. So I apologize. It's a little bit of a difficult question to answer without having the clarity. But
she sent a little bit more here, and I think what she's trying to ask is a lot of our chapters have older members and quite a bit of older members. How do you attract younger members when all you have is older members to start with?
Oh, okay. Well, so what I would say is that, first of all, you may or may not have one younger member you can reach out to ask this question, but certainly even the younger members, the older members will be able to have at least some insight to this. Is ask them what things are going on, what activities, maybe let's face it, if you're talking about boys, and truth be told, more often than not girls too, something like a video game tournament or just a video game day is a pretty good activity to get people involved in. But what you want to do is, rather than try and guess, and certainly sometimes guessing is what you have to do, but rather than guess, certainly talk to the members you have, your older members. And the truth is, the great thing about having your older members around is that they are, in essence, young adults. And so they're capable of doing a lot. They know a lot already. And so they can sort of act as pseudo-adults, pseudo-advisors at the event in helping run it, helping set it up, that sort of thing. So even if you don't have a lot of younger members, you still have older members that are there, be they boys or girls, that can, in essence, when a prospective young person walks in and all they're there to do is play video games, they can sort of get a sense that the person that's there, that older member, is sort of like an older brother or older sister, and they're there to help, and they're there to be a part of things with them, not just to lord over them and tell them to pick up their laundry or whatever. So it's granted, you may not have any younger members, but if you start having events that are geared towards maybe a younger age group, and I got to tell you, like I said, video games seem to be a fairly universal thing across both ages and gender. Then that's certainly one way of doing it. But I wouldn't use that as your only thing. Maybe maybe video games aren't your thing. We have a chapter here that's really wildly involved in Dungeons and Dragons, and I never in my wildest dreams would have come up with that until they told us. So I think you need to speak to your whatever remaining members you have. You need to speak to them about it, and then get their perspective as to maybe they have younger brothers, and they can get an idea from them, or maybe they actually have the right idea about what to do next. But you need to do something. You can't just sit around and hope it all works out. You actually have to take action. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, I'm waiting to see if any more questions pop up. I don't see any. So while I'm waiting, I want to thank you for joining us today, Jamie.
My pleasure.
And I remember hearing you talk in February here in New Hampshire. You came out and you talked to us about some stuff. It was a very good presentation, and I think you did a great job this time as well.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Hopefully the information rings true with folks, and there's it's a call to action, but it's also a call to mindset, thinking about what you need to do to make things better, and taking an approach to these things that ultimately results in positive outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much.